it is still going to be cool to see The Undertaker go into the Hall of Fame. And that was one of the things Vince McMahon talked about on Pat McAfee's show. And he confirmed what I believed was the right call all along. And that is Vince McMahon will in fact be inducting The Undertaker into the Hall of Fame. And he is absolutely the right guy to do it. Sorry, there's nobody else. Even if Paul Bearer was alive. No, Vince is the guy. Sure, you can make a case for Foley, Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Kane, Paul Bearer if he was still with us, and probably a lot of other opponents that Undertaker has a lot of history with. But there's only one guy that should induct him, and that's Vince McMahon. I think that he's the only guy Vince should have ever inducted. Austin did make sense because Austin did save the WWE from complete WCW annihilation, and his feud with Vince McMahon is probably going to go down as the best feud of all time, honestly. So I can understand Vince inducting Austin for that reason. But in terms of the longevity, you got to remember Austin's run was short. Came in late 95. He was gone by 03. It was 8 years, and only 3 or 4 of those was on top. So he had a quick run in the company where Taker, came in 1990, had a 30-year career before finally retiring. And then his retirement ceremony had to happen in the Thunderdome. And that was terrible. And his career spanned so many decades, and the loyalty that he had for Vince McMahon. When everybody was jumping to WCW, he stayed through all of that. He developed a legacy for himself in the WWE that's going to be extremely difficult to duplicate. We're going to have some 30-year careers. We have them right now. Ray's been wrestling 30. Jericho's been wrestling 30. But The Undertaker is that same gimmick for that long. Yes, he spent time, in the territories. He spent time in WCW before coming in, but once he became The Undertaker, there was no looking back. And, he's got that Andre the Giant type of legacy to me, where he's got that type of a reputation, where this is talking about The Undertaker, the performer, the professional wrestler. I don't think I could really sit down and have a meal with The Undertaker and discuss things about the world that I'm going to have a whole lot of agreement with him on, if you know what I mean. But in terms of his character and his career in professional wrestling, there's never been anyone like him. And Vince McMahon should be eternally grateful for what The Undertaker gave not only to him, but to WWE and the legacy that Taker created for himself there. He is a legendary figure. He is a true comic book character come to life, and he had one of the most interesting careers in all of wrestling. Probably will go down as the best and greatest gimmick of all time, which is even more incredible because the gimmick on the surface is fucking stupid. The first time I saw The Undertaker, I'm like, what the hell? He was scary as hell, don't get me wrong, but to me, it was like, the Berserker or some of these other weird gimmicks that WWE did back in the day. This one, he just fit in them holes like one of them round pegs. You know what I mean? He just fit in there perfectly into that gimmick like a goddamn glove. And he was instantly terrifying. I mean, I was only 13 years old when he debuted. And I remember the first few matches he would have when he would do that look, before he really grew his hair out and he had that pale look to him. It was scary, man. Like, he was a legitimately scary guy. So to see his career span how all those decades and all the changes he went through, even kind of dropping the dead man for a while and going into the American Badass like Stone Cold's bringing up, and then going back into the dead man and having that long run, all of those world titles spanning all those different decades. This guy beat Hulk Hogan for the title twice. He beat Steve Austin for the title. He's beat a lot of major names for championships. He's main evented WrestleMania. And I think there's a lot about him. You can make a case for The Undertaker to be the greatest of all time. I really, truly believe that because of his consistency and his longevity. He was never maybe quite as over as Austin and Hogan during their peaks, but man, he was close. And I don't think any wrestling fans really, truly booed him, even when he was a heel. And if The Undertaker was coming out, you weren't going to the popcorn stands or going to get a beer or going to take a piss. You were going to watch whatever he was going to do, regardless of what year it was, what decade it was, what show it was, what pay-per-view it was. He's been there through all of it. So I think Vince McMahon is the absolute right guy to induct him into the Hall of Fame because nobody's ever given Vince what The Undertaker gave him. And especially giving him that at so many critical times in Vince's life and career. At first, he was there when Hogan left. Then he was there through the steroid trial. Then he was there through WCW kicking their ass all the way until they turned the corner. And then when they were in control, Undertaker's legacy continued to roll. And I think the two of them had a great relationship, and Undertaker is synonymous with WWE. I mean, he's eclipsed anybody else's run, Hogan's, Andre's, anybody that's ever been in that company or has history with the company. He's eclipsed anything that they've ever done, in terms of working for Vince McMahon. So for that reason is why there was nobody else in my head. We talked about that when The Undertaker was announced for the Hall of Fame. I'm like, sure, it could be Taker, or it could be Shawn or Triple H or Kane, but it's got to be Vince. It absolutely has to be Vince. So he revealed that on Pat McAfee's show. That was the right call.